Dae-sung stood in the waiting chamber and tried not to breathe too loudly. The walls around him were made of something that looked like black glass, and they seemed to swallow every sound he made. He could hear his own heartbeat in his ears, steady and strong. It had never bothered him before. Now it felt like the loudest thing in the universe. He was 32 years old and had spent the last 8 years studying alien cultures. He had met beings made of gas, creatures that lived in the cold of space, and civilizations that spoke through colors. Nothing had prepared him for the Velcrosians. The door in front of him had no handle, no visible seam. It simply existed as a rectangle of deeper darkness in the black wall. Dae-sung adjusted his formal diplomatic jacket and waited. Behind him stood 3 other humans, his team from Earth. They were just as nervous as he was, though they tried to hide it. Bora was checking her datapad for the 100th time. She was a military attaché, trained to protect the diplomatic mission. Her hand kept drifting toward her hip, where she usually wore a weapon. There were no weapons allowed in the Imperial Court. Hyunwoo stood beside her, his face calm but his fingers drumming against his leg. He was their cultural specialist, the one who had studied Velcrosian history for years, and Ji-won, the youngest of them at 25, kept taking deep breaths. She was their medical officer, and she looked like she wanted to examine everyone to make sure they were healthy enough for what was coming. A sound filled the room. Though calling it a sound was not quite right. It was more like a feeling, a pressure that pushed against Dae-sung's mind. The Velcrosians did not speak with mouths or vocal cords. They communicated through electromagnetic pulses that other beings could feel directly in their brains. It was efficient and clear, but it always made Dae-sung feel like someone was touching the inside of his skull. The message was simple: enter. The door dissolved. Beyond it lay the Grand Imperial Court. Dae-sung had seen pictures, had watched videos, had read descriptions. None of it had prepared him for the reality. The chamber was vast enough to hold a city block. The ceiling was so high that he could not see it, lost in darkness above. The floor beneath his feet was perfectly smooth and reflected like still water, though it was solid. And everywhere, absolute silence. Hundreds of beings filled the court. Dae-sung recognized some of the species. The tall crystalline Shevner who governed 12 systems, the floating Quental who lived for thousands of years, the four-armed Brekton who controlled the largest merchant fleet in this part of the galaxy. Every species that mattered in this sector of space had representatives here, and every single one of them was completely silent. They did not breathe, or if they did, they made no sound doing it. They did not shift or shuffle. They stood or floated or rested in perfect stillness. The only movement was the occasional slow gesture, carefully controlled to make no noise. It was like walking into a room full of statues. Dae-sung took a step forward. His boot touched the floor with a soft click that seemed to echo forever. Every being in the chamber turned to look at him. He felt their attention like physical weight. He kept walking. Bora, Hyunwoo, and Ji-won followed. Each footstep was an announcement of their presence, a declaration that they were different, that they were outsiders. At the far end of the chamber, raised on a platform that seemed to float without support, sat Emperor Thilvarex the Eternal. The Emperor was enormous. His body was encased in metal and crystal, technology so advanced that it looked like art. Tubes and wires connected to ports all across his form, and his head was surrounded by a crown of floating spheres that pulsed with soft blue light. His eyes, if they were eyes, glowed from within his helmet. Dae-sung could not tell where the Emperor's body ended and the technology began. The Emperor had ruled the Velcrosian Empire for over 300 years. Some said he was immortal. Others said he had died long ago, and what remained was just a very smart machine. Dae-sung did not know which was true. He was not sure it mattered. They reached the center of the chamber. A spot on the floor glowed softly, marking where they should stand. Dae-sung stopped there and bowed in the Velcrosian manner, arms crossed over his chest, head lowered. His team did the same. The Emperor's voice filled his mind. It was cold and vast, like falling into deep water. Human delegation. You stand before the throne of eternal silence. You bring noise to these sacred halls. Dae-sung straightened. He had practiced this moment for months. Great Emperor, we bring greetings from humanity. We seek friendship and trade between our peoples. You seek much, but you offer insult. The Emperor's words pressed against Dae-sung's thoughts. You bring the sounds of primitive flesh to our court, breathing, movement, and worse. Dae-sung felt his heartbeat quicken. He knew what was coming. Your heart makes noise, the Emperor said. Constant, uncontrolled, disrespectful. This cannot be tolerated. From the side of the chamber, another Velcrosian approached. This one was smaller than the Emperor, but still large, at least 7 feet tall. His title appeared in Daesung's mind as he approached. High Chamberlain Velmoth. The Empire has standards, the Chamberlain's voice said in his head. All who enter the court must maintain proper silence. Other species use technology to suppress their biological functions during audiences. Some modify their bodies, some use suspended animation. But all comply. Daesung felt a chill run through him. You want me to stop my heartbeat? The Emperor demands it, Velmoth said simply. Your heart is loud. It disturbs the peace of the court. It must be silenced or you must leave. Bora stepped forward, her face red with anger. Daesung held up a hand to stop her. He kept his voice steady. If my heart stops, I die. That is a choice you must make, the Chamberlain said. But understand this. If humanity cannot comply with imperial law, then humanity has no place in this empire. Your ships will be turned away from our systems. Your colonies near our borders will be considered hostile. Your trade will be banned. You will be declared primitive and unworthy. The weight of those words hit Daesung like a physical blow. Humanity had 17 colony worlds scattered across this sector. Most of them relied on trade with Velcrosian systems for food, medicine, and basic supplies. If the Empire closed its borders, millions of humans would suffer. Some might die, and all because of a heartbeat. I need time, Daesung said, to find a solution. The Emperor was silent for a long moment. Then, you have 7 solar cycles. Return with your heartbeat silenced or do not return at all. This audience is ended. The pressure in Daesung's mind released. He bowed again, turned, and walked back toward the entrance. His team followed. Each footstep felt heavier than the last. Each breath seemed louder, and his heartbeat, steady and strong, sounded like thunder in his ears. They did not speak until they were back in their ship, sealed in the human embassy section where no Velcrosians could hear them. Then Bora exploded. They cannot be serious. They want you to die just to talk to them? Hyunwoo sank into a chair. It is their culture. Silence is sacred to them. They see biological noise as a sign of primitive nature. That is insane, Bora said. Jiwon was already pulling up medical files on her screen. Maybe there is a way. Some kind of artificial heart, or a device that can muffle the sound without stopping the function. Daesung stood at the window and looked out at the alien city beyond. Towers of black and silver stretched into the purple sky. Ships moved silently through the air. Everything was ordered, controlled, perfect, and utterly lifeless. No, he said quietly. The others turned to look at him. No what? Bora asked. No artificial heart. No devices. No modifications. Daesung put his hand on his chest, feeling the steady thump beneath his palm. This is what makes me human. This is what makes me alive. I will not silence it for anyone. Then what do we do? Jiwon asked. We have 7 days. Daesung turned to face them. We find out why they are so afraid of a heartbeat. And we find out if anyone else in this empire thinks the way they do. Hyunwoo stood up. You want to investigate the Emperor? I want to understand, Daesung said. Because something is wrong here. An entire civilization built on silence. That is not natural. Something happened to make them this way. And if you are wrong? Bora asked. If this is just who they are? Daesung smiled, though it did not reach his eyes. Then I guess my heart will keep beating anyway. Come on. We have work to do. Outside, the silent city waited, and deep in the imperial court, the Emperor sat on his throne and felt something he had not felt in 200 years. His own heartbeat, faint and suppressed, answering the rhythm of the humans' defiance. The human embassy was a small building compared to the massive structures around it. It had been given to them 3 years ago when humanity first made contact with the Velcrosian Empire. Back then, everyone had been excited. A powerful civilization that controlled hundreds of worlds wanted to talk to them. It had seemed like a dream. Now it felt like a trap. Daesung sat in the conference room with his team. The walls here were not black glass like the Velcrosian buildings. They were painted a warm cream color, and there were pictures of Earth hanging in frames. Mountains, oceans, forests. Things that made noise, Daesung realized. Wind in trees, waves on beaches, birds singing. No wonder the Velcrosians had not wanted to visit. Bora was pacing back and forth, her boots loud on the floor. She did not care. I have been going through records, she said. Every species that deals with the Empire has a story about the silence law. The Brecton had to install sound dampeners in their bodies. All 4 of their hearts now beat so quietly you cannot hear them even with medical equipment. What happened to the ones who refused? Jiwan asked. Bora stopped pacing. They were banned from the Empire. Their colonies starved within 2 years. They had to submit or die. Hyunwoo had a pile of data pads in front of him. He had been reading for hours. I have been looking at Velcrosian history. The interesting thing is that the silence doctrine is not that old. Only about 2,000 years. Only, Jiwan said. That is ancient. Not for the Velcrosians, Hyunwoo said. Their civilization is over 30,000 years old. For most of their history, they were not silent. I found references to something called the Festival of Sounds. It was their biggest celebration. Music, singing, all kinds of noise. Daesung leaned forward. What changed? Emperor Krelvax I, Hyunwoo said. He took power 2,000 years ago after a civil war. One of his first acts was to declare all biological sounds to be primitive and shameful. He said that true civilization required perfect control over one's body. Anyone who made noise was considered barbaric. Let me guess, Bora said. Anyone who disagreed was killed. Worse, Hyunwoo said quietly. They were modified. Forced surgery to remove or alter anything that made sound. The emperor turned his own people into what he thought civilization should be. The room was quiet for a moment. Daesung could hear the ventilation system, a soft hum that was comforting in its normalcy. He could hear his own breathing. His heartbeat. So this is not about culture, he said. This is about control. That was 2,000 years ago, Jiwan pointed out. The current emperor has ruled for over 300 years. Why does he continue it? Because it works, Bora said bitterly. A population that cannot even make sound is not going to raise their voices in protest. Daesung stood up and walked to the window. Outside, Velcrosian citizens moved through the streets in perfect silence. They did not talk to each other, though he knew they were communicating through their electromagnetic pulses. They did not laugh. They did not sing. They simply existed, quiet and controlled. We need to contact Earth, he said. They need to know what we are dealing with. The message took 6 hours to reach Earth. The response came back 8 hours later. Daesung read it alone in his office, and with each word his heart sank deeper. The United Earth Council had debated for 3 hours. The vote was close, but the decision was final. Daesung was authorized to do whatever was necessary to secure good relations with the Velcrosian Empire, including, if absolutely required, medical modification to silence his heartbeat. They were telling him to give in. The message went on. Earth could not afford to make enemies of the Empire. The colony worlds needed the trade routes. Millions of lives were at stake. Personal sacrifice was regrettable but sometimes necessary for the greater good. Daesung read the message 3 times. Then he deleted it. He walked back to the conference room. His team was still there, along with someone new. A human man in his 40s with gray in his hair and tired eyes. Minsu was the head of the embassy, technically Daesung's superior. You got the message from Earth, Minsu said. It was not a question. I got it. They want you to comply. I know. Minsu sighed and sat down heavily. Daesung, I have lived on this world for 3 years. I have seen what happens to species that defy the Empire. It is not pretty. Earth is right to be cautious. Earth is not here, Daesung said. Earth did not stand in that court and feel what I felt. The Emperor is not just asking for silence. He is asking us to cut out a piece of what makes us human. Your heartbeat is just a sound, Minsu said. No, Daesung said. It is not. He put his hand on his chest again. The gesture was becoming a habit. Every beat is my body telling me I am alive. It is blood moving through my veins, oxygen going to my brain, energy being created and used. My heartbeat is not noise, it is life. And if I silence it, even artificially, I am telling the universe that my life is worth less than their comfort. That is very poetic, Minsu said, but we are talking about practical politics. We are talking about survival. So am I, Daesung said. Bora stood up. I am with Daesung. If they want us to mutilate ourselves just to talk to them, then maybe we should not be talking to them. Easy to say when you are not responsible for millions of lives, Minsu said. I am responsible for my own life, Bora said, and I will not let anyone tell me that my heart beating is an insult. Jiwan looked between them, worried. Hyunwoo was still reading his data pads, but Daesung could see the tension in his shoulders. Before anyone could say more, the door chimed. They all turned. Velcrosians did not use doors like humans did, and the embassy had very few visitors. Jiwan checked the security screen. There is someone at the entrance, a Velcrosian, but the computer says she is not a government official. Let her in, Daesung said. The being who entered was smaller than the Velcrosians they had met in the court. She was only about 6 feet tall, and her technology was less elaborate. She wore simple robes instead of the complex armor of the nobles. Her electromagnetic voice was quieter, gentler. I am Tae-hee, she said. I am a scholar at the Imperial Archives. I need to speak with the human called Daesung. Daesung stepped forward. I am Daesung. Tae-hee looked around at the group, then back at him. What I have to say is dangerous. If the Emperor's agents discover that I've spoken to you, I will be silenced. Permanently. We can keep a secret, Daesung said. Tae-hee seemed to consider this. Then she reached up and touched a device on the side of her head. There was a soft click, and suddenly Daesung could hear her breathing. It was quiet and raspy, like she was not used to using her lungs. I heard what happened in the court, Tae-hee said, and her voice was different now. It came from her mouth, shaped by lips and tongue. It was hoarse and unpracticed, but it was sound. Real biological sound. I heard that you refused to silence your heartbeat. You heard correctly, Daesung said. Then you are either very brave or very foolish, Tae-hee said. But you are not alone. There are others like me, Velcrosians who remember the old ways. We preserve the forbidden histories. We keep alive the knowledge of what we once were. Hyunwoo jumped up. The Festival of Sounds. You know about it? Tae-hee's eyes widened. You have done research. Good. Yes, the Festival of Sounds. It was banned 2,000 years ago, but some of us still celebrate it in secret. We hide in places where the Emperor's sensors cannot reach, and we make sound. We sing. We laugh. We remember what it was to be truly alive. How many? Daesung asked. How many Velcrosians feel this way? More than the Emperor knows, Tae-hee said. But fewer than we need. Most of our people have forgotten. They have lived in silence for so long that they cannot imagine anything else. To them, sound is truly primitive. They believe the propaganda. She moved closer to Daesung. But when I heard about the human with the loud heartbeat who refused to be silent, I knew. I knew that maybe finally someone could remind our people of what they have lost. What do you mean? Daesung asked. Your heartbeat, Tae-hee said. It terrifies the Emperor. Why? Because it cannot be commanded, Tae-hee said simply. The Emperor can control everything in his domain. Speech, movement, thought even. But he cannot control your heartbeat. It beats without his permission. It beats because you are alive. That is power he does not have. Daesung felt something shift in his chest. Not his heartbeat, but something deeper. Understanding. The silence doctrine is not about civilization, he said slowly. It is about fear. The Emperor fears life itself because life cannot be controlled. Yes, Tae-hee said. And if you can show our people that, if you can remind them that sound is not primitive but natural, not shameful but beautiful, then maybe things can change. How? Bora asked. We have 7 days. Then Daesung is banned and humans are shut out of the Empire. I do not know, Tae-hee admitted, but I can help you search the archives. There must be something, some law or precedent or ancient rite that can help. Minsu spoke up. This is dangerous. If we are caught helping a resistance movement, Earth will not protect us. Then do not help, Daesung said. I am not asking anyone to risk themselves for this. But I am not going to stop my heart. Not for the Emperor, not for Earth, not for anyone. He looked at Tae-hee. Show me these archives. Let me learn everything I can about your people. I have 7 days to find a way to make the Emperor hear what he does not want to hear. What is that? Tae-hee asked. Daesung smiled. The sound of life. The sound of freedom. The sound of a heartbeat that will not be silenced. The Imperial Archives were housed in a building that looked like a twisted piece of black metal, frozen in mid-spin. Tae-hee led Daesung through corridors that seemed to shift when he was not looking directly at them. The walls absorbed all sound, making every footstep feel wrong, like walking through a dream. They went down, level after level, deeper into the building. Tae-hee explained that the oldest records were kept at the bottom, in chambers that had not been visited by Imperial officials in centuries. That was where the resistance met. That was where the truth was hidden. Bora and Hyunwoo came with them. Jiwon stayed at the embassy, working on something she said might help. Minsu had made his position clear. He would not stop them, but he would not help them either. He had a responsibility to Earth, Daesung understood. But he also knew that sometimes responsibility meant more than just following orders. The archive chamber was vast. Shelves stretched up into darkness, filled with data crystals that glowed softly in the dim light. Each crystal contained thousands of years of information. The history of an entire civilization, locked away and forgotten. 3 other Velcrosians waited there. They wore the same simple robes as Taehi, and they had the same devices on their heads that allowed them to disable their silence suppressors. When they saw Daesung, they all touched their devices. Breathing sounds filled the chamber. "This is Daesung," Taehi said, "the human I told you about." An older Velcrosian stepped forward. His name appeared in Daesung's mind, Kelvin. "We heard what happened at the court. The whole city has heard. The Emperor has made announcements about the primitive humans who cannot control their bodies. Let me guess," Bora said. "He is using me as an example of why silence is necessary." "Precisely," Kelvin said. "He says that if the Empire allows such noise, we will descend into chaos. That biological sounds are the first step toward barbarism. But some people do not agree," Taehi said. She gestured to the others. "More are asking questions. Why is a heartbeat shameful? Why is breath primitive? These are questions that have not been asked openly in generations." Hyunwoo was already examining the archive shelves. "What are we looking for exactly?" "Anything that can help," Taehi said. "Records of the time before the silence doctrine. Evidence of what we were. Proof that this is not natural for our people." They spread out and began searching. The data crystals had to be inserted into special readers, and the information appeared as projections in the air. Daesung had trouble reading the ancient Velcrosian language, but Hyunwoo helped translate. Hours passed. Daesung learned about the Festival of Sounds, a celebration that lasted 10 days and involved music, poetry, and performance. He learned about Velcrosian opera, a form of art that combined electromagnetic pulses with actual vocal sounds to create something beautiful and complex. He learned that his people had once been loud and joyful. "Here," one of the other Velcrosians said. Her name was Linja. She was young, maybe the equivalent of a human teenager. "I found something about Emperor Krelvax, the one who started the silence doctrine." They gathered around her reader. The projection showed text and images from 2,000 years ago. Emperor Krelvax had taken power after killing his father in a civil war. His father, Emperor Tholvan, had been loved by the people. His death had been a tragedy. Krelvax had claimed it was necessary for the Empire's survival, but many had not believed him. "Look at this part," Linja said. She highlighted a section of text. "It says that Krelvax suffered from a condition. He had enhanced hearing, much stronger than normal. Every sound caused him pain. His father's laughter, his people's celebrations, all of it hurt him. So he banned sound entirely," Hyunwoo said. "He could not stand to hear it, so no one was allowed to make it." "It was not just about his comfort," Taehi said, reading further. "He believed that sound was what had made his father weak, that the joy and celebration had distracted from the serious business of ruling. He thought that silence would make the Empire stronger." "Did it?" Bora asked. Taehi's expression was hard to read on her alien face, but Daesung thought he saw sadness there. "Yes and no. The Empire became more efficient. Decisions were made faster. Work was done without distraction. But we also became less. We lost our art, our music, our joy." Kelvin found another record. This one talks about the Great Silencing. That is what they called the first year of the new law. Millions of Velcrosians were forced to undergo surgery or install suppressors. Those who refused were exiled or executed. Within a generation, silence was normal. Children grew up never knowing what their parents' voices sounded like. Daesung felt sick. How could a whole civilization forget something so basic? "Slowly," Taehi said. "One generation at a time." Each generation knew a little less than the one before. Eventually, no one remembered what it was like to sing. "Except for you," Daesung said. "How did you remember?" "My family," Taehi said quietly. "We have kept the old ways secret for 2,000 years, passed down from parent to child. We never forgot. And when I grew up, I realized there were others like us. Not many, but enough. We found each other. We preserved what we could. They continued searching. The archives held so much information that it seemed impossible to find anything specific. But slowly a picture emerged. The current emperor, Thilvarax the Eternal, had ruled for 300 years. He had been one of Krelvax's generals, one of those who had enforced the silence doctrine most brutally. When he took power, he had made the laws even stricter. He had expanded the empire, bringing hundreds of other species under Velcrosian control, and he had made sure that every species learned to be silent. He is continuing what Krelvax started, Hyun-woo said, making the whole galaxy quiet. But why? Bora asked. What does he gain? Linja found something else. Look at this. Medical records from 50 years ago. The Emperor has been undergoing modifications. Extensive ones. His body is more machine than organic now. We knew that, Daesung said. But look at why, Linja said. He is replacing everything biological. Everything that makes noise. Everything that can die. The realization hit Daesung like cold water. He is trying to become immortal. He is trying to become perfect, Taehi corrected. In his mind, biological life is flawed. It makes noise. It needs food and rest. It ages and dies. So he is removing all of it. He wants to be pure thought, pure order, pure control. And our heartbeats remind him that he has not succeeded. Daesung said, as long as there are beings with hearts that beat, he is reminded that he is not truly immortal. He is just a very old being slowly replacing his body with metal. That is why he fears you, Kelvin said. Your heartbeat is proof that life continues without his permission. That nature does not obey his laws. Daesung paced around the chamber. His mind was working fast. We need to show people this. All of this. The history. The truth about why silence was imposed. How? Taehi asked. The Emperor controls all communication. Any message we try to send will be blocked. Jiwon's voice came through Daesung's communicator. Daesung, are you there? I am here. What is it? I think I found something, Jiwon said. Can you come back to the embassy? They made their way back through the twisting corridors. The journey felt faster going up. When they reached the embassy, Jiwon met them in the lab. She looked tired but excited. I have been studying Velcrosian technology, she said. Specifically, their communication systems. They use electromagnetic pulses, right? Directed energy that goes straight to the brain. That is correct, Taehi said. Well, I thought about our problem, Jiwon continued. We need to send a message that cannot be blocked. Something that will reach every Velcrosian at once. And then I realized, what if we do not use their communication system at all? She pulled up a diagram on her screen. What if we use something more basic? Sound waves, actual physical vibrations in the air. Bora frowned. But they have suppressed their hearing. Most Velcrosians cannot hear anymore. Cannot hear normally, Jiwon said. But their bodies still have the biological equipment. Ears, auditory nerves. All of it. It is just suppressed, not removed. What if we create a sound so powerful, so resonant, that it bypasses the suppressors? Something that makes their bodies remember how to hear. What kind of sound? Hyun-woo asked. Jiwon smiled. A heartbeat, but not just any heartbeat. A heartbeat amplified and broadcast on every frequency their bodies can possibly detect. Daesung's heartbeat turned into a signal that will reach every Velcrosian on this planet. Daesung stared at her. That is insane. That is brilliant, Taehi said. If their bodies remember how to hear even for a moment, it will break through years of conditioning. They will experience sound again. Real, biological sound. But how do we broadcast it? Kelvin asked. The Emperor controls all transmitters. We do not need transmitters, Jiwon said. We need resonance. The Velcrosian buildings are perfect for it. They are designed to absorb sound, right? Which means they are incredibly sensitive to vibrations. If we set up the right equipment at the right locations, we can turn the entire city into a speaker. The buildings themselves will carry the sound. Bora was nodding. It could work. We would need access to several key buildings, power stations, water facilities, places with infrastructure that goes throughout the city. The resistance can help with that, Taehi said. We have members who work in those facilities. How long do we need? Daesung asked. 3 days to build the equipment, Ji-won said. 1 day to place it. That leaves us 3 days before your deadline. Then we have a plan, Daesung said. We are going to make this entire city hear a human heartbeat. They worked through the night. Ji-won designed the equipment with help from the Velcrosian engineers in the Resistance. It was not complex technology, but it had to be precise. The frequencies had to be exactly right, or it would just be noise. Daesung spent his time learning everything he could about Velcrosian physiology and psychology. He needed to understand what a heartbeat would mean to them, what it would make them feel. On the 3rd day, Minsu came to find him. The older man looked even more tired than before. Earth has sent another message, Minsu said. They want an update. They want to know if you have agreed to the modifications. What did you tell them? Nothing yet, Minsu said. Daesung, what are you planning? Something that will either change everything or get us all killed, Daesung said honestly. Probably both. Minsu sat down heavily. You know I cannot officially support this. I know. But unofficially, Minsu said slowly, I want you to know that I am proud of you. Whatever happens, you are standing up for something important. Not many people would do that. Thank you, Daesung said. Just try not to start a war, Minsu said with a weak smile. The equipment was ready. The Resistance members had placed the devices throughout the city. All they needed now was the right moment, and Daesung knew exactly when that would be. In 2 days, he had to return to the imperial court for his final audience with the emperor. He would stand in that vast, silent chamber, surrounded by hundreds of beings, with the emperor demanding his compliance, and his heartbeat would answer for him. Not just his heartbeat, the heartbeat of every human who had ever lived, the rhythm of life itself refusing to be silenced. The morning of the 7th day arrived too quickly. Daesung woke before dawn and spent an hour sitting in silence, listening to his own heartbeat. It was steady and calm despite everything. His body did not know that today might be the last day he drew breath on this world. It just kept beating, kept living, kept insisting on existence. He got dressed in his formal diplomatic uniform, navy blue with gold trim, the colors of United Earth. He pinned on his badge, straightened his collar, and looked at himself in the mirror. A 32-year-old man who had somehow become the center of an interstellar crisis. His team was waiting in the common room. Bora checked his uniform with a critical eye, adjusting his collar even though it did not need it. Hyunwoo gave him a small nod of encouragement. Ji-won held out a small device no bigger than a coin. Wear this under your clothes, she said. It will monitor your heartbeat and transmit it to our equipment. When you give the signal, the broadcast will begin. Daesung took the device and pressed it against his chest. It stuck to his skin, warm and almost invisible. His heart beat against it, and he imagined that small rhythm being carried across an entire city. Are you sure about this? Minsu asked. He had come to see them off, though officially he still knew nothing about their plan. No, Daesung said honestly, but I am doing it anyway. That is probably the definition of bravery, Minsu said. They took a shuttle to the imperial court. The city passed below them, black towers and silent streets. Somewhere in those buildings, the Resistance members were waiting. Tae-hee and her people ready to activate the equipment at his signal. They were risking everything, too. The court was just as massive and silent as before, maybe more so. Word had spread about the human who refused to silence his heartbeat, and today was his deadline. The chamber was packed with beings from across the empire, all of them perfectly quiet, all of them waiting to see what would happen. Daesung walked down the center aisle. His footsteps echoed, his breathing sounded loud in his own ears, and his heartbeat, monitored by Ji-won's device, beat steady and strong. The emperor sat on his floating platform, surrounded by his crown of glowing spheres. High Chamberlain Velmoth stood beside the throne. Other imperial officials lined the walls, their technology gleaming in the dim light. Daesung reached the center point and stopped. He bowed in the Velcrosian manner. The emperor's voice filled his mind immediately. It was colder than before, harder. 7 solar cycles have passed. Human diplomat Daesung. You stand before the throne of eternal silence for the final time. Have you come to show proper respect? Is your heartbeat silenced? Daesung straightened. He could feel hundreds of eyes on him, thousands of beings all waiting for his answer. His hand rested on his chest, feeling the beat beneath his palm. Great Emperor, he said, his voice clear and steady. I have come to answer your question. But first I would like to tell you a story. The Emperor was silent for a long moment. Then you presume much, human. But very well, speak. Your last word should be interesting. Daesung took a breath. 2,000 years ago there was a Velcrosian named Krelvax. He suffered from a condition that made sounds painful to him. Instead of treating his condition, he decided that sound itself was the problem. He banned all biological noise. He forced his people to be silent. He convinced them that sound was primitive and shameful. Murmurs rippled through the chamber, not spoken but felt, electromagnetic pulses of surprise and unease. But it was not about civilization, Daesung continued. It was about control, about fear. Krelvax feared what he could not control, so he destroyed it. And every emperor since has continued that legacy. You have turned silence into a weapon. You have made billions of beings ashamed of the very fact that they are alive. Enough. The emperor's voice crashed into Daesung's mind like a wave. You speak heresy. You insult the foundations of our civilization. I speak truth, Daesung said. And you know it. That is why my heartbeat terrifies you so much. Not because it is loud. Not because it is disrespectful. But because it reminds you of something you have tried very hard to forget. And what is that? The emperor's voice was dangerous now. That you are alive, Daesung said quietly. That beneath all your technology, all your modifications, all your power, you still have a heart that beats. And it beats without your permission. It beats because that is what life does. It insists on existing. The emperor rose from his throne. He was enormous, towering over everyone in the chamber. The spheres around his head pulsed faster, angry red instead of calm blue. You dare, the emperor said. You dare to question me? To question the foundation of 3,000 years of civilization. I could destroy you with a thought. I could wipe humanity from the galaxy. You could, Daesung agreed, but it would not change the truth. You are afraid of a simple heartbeat because it represents everything you are trying to escape. Mortality, vulnerability, the fundamental nature of being alive. I am beyond such things, the emperor said. I am eternal. I am perfect. I am order itself. You are lying to yourself, Daesung said. The chamber erupted in chaos. Silent chaos, but chaos nonetheless. Beings turned to each other in shock. The Imperial Guards moved forward, their weapons powering up. And Daesung pressed his hand against his chest, against the device Jiwan had given him. Let me show you something, he said. The equipment throughout the city activated all at once. The buildings themselves began to vibrate. The careful acoustic design that absorbed sound so perfectly became a perfect speaker, carrying a single sound across every street, every tower, every space in the imperial capital, the sound of a human heartbeat. Thump, 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 thump. It was not just Daesung's heartbeat. G1 had recorded hundreds of human heartbeats and layered them together, young and old, male and female, fast and slow. The collective rhythm of humanity, broadcast at frequencies that Velcrosian biology could not ignore. The effect was immediate. Beings throughout the chamber stumbled. Their suppressors could not block something this powerful, this resonant. For the first time in generations, Velcrosians were hearing sound. Real, biological, undeniable sound, and it was not painful. It was not harsh or grating. It was rhythm. It was music. It was life. Taehi had positioned herself in the crowd. She and the other resistance members had disabled their suppressors completely. As the heartbeat washed over the chamber, they began to do something that had not been done in the imperial court for 2,000 years. They sang. It started quietly, just Taehi's voice joining the rhythm of the heartbeat. Then Linja joined her. Then Kelvin. Then others, Velcrosians that Daesung had never met, members of the resistance scattered throughout the crowd. Their voices were rusty and unpracticed, but they remembered the old songs, the forbidden songs. The emperor stood frozen on his platform. His crown of spheres spun wildly. His electromagnetic voice was trying to issue commands, but no one was listening. Everyone was experiencing sound, many for the first time in their lives. Some were frightened, some were angry, But many, so many, looked like they were waking up from a long dream. "Stop this!" The Emperor's voice finally broke through the noise, harsh and desperate. "Stop this at once!" But the heartbeat continued. Thump, 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 thump. The buildings carried it. The air vibrated with it. There was no stopping it now. Dae-sung looked up at the Emperor. "You wanted silence. You wanted perfect control. But life does not work that way. Life is messy. Life is loud. Life is a heartbeat that keeps going no matter what you command." The Emperor's guards were moving toward Dae-sung now, weapons raised. But High Chamberlain Velmoth stepped between them and Dae-sung. The Chamberlain stood still, for a moment, and then he reached up and touched his own suppressor. Click. Velmoth drew in a breath and everyone heard it, a raspy, gasping sound. Then he spoke, his voice coming from his mouth, shaped by biological organs that had not been used in a century. "I remember," Velmoth said, and his voice was barely a whisper. "I remember singing with my father, before the modifications, before the silence. I remember what it was like to make sound." He turned to the Emperor. "We all remember deep down. We have just been too afraid to admit it." The Emperor took a step back. For the first time since Dae-sung had met him, the Emperor seemed uncertain. Small. "You are destroying everything," the Emperor said. "Order, control, perfection." "We are not destroying," Dae-sung said. "We are remembering. We are choosing life over your version of perfection." The Emperor's crown of spheres began to pulse erratically. And then Dae-sung heard something else beneath the broadcast heartbeat, beneath the singing, beneath all the noise. Another heartbeat. Faint and irregular, but unmistakable. The Emperor's own heart, beating for the first time in decades. His modifications had suppressed it, hidden it, but it had never truly stopped. It had been there all along, waiting. The Emperor heard it too. Dae-sung could see it in his posture, in the way he suddenly grabbed at his chest. The Emperor who had tried to become perfect, who had replaced nearly everything biological in his body, was confronted with the one thing he could not escape. He was still alive, and his heart knew it. "No," the Emperor said, and for the first time his voice was not steady. "No, this cannot be. I am beyond this. I am eternal." "You are alive," Dae-sung said gently. "That is all. Just alive. Like the rest of us." The Emperor's legs gave out. He collapsed onto his platform and his guards rushed forward. But they did not attack Dae-sung. They were trying to help the Emperor, who was clutching his chest like he was in pain. Maybe he was. The sound of his own heartbeat after all these years of denial might have been more than he could bear. Commander Vrextal, the head of the Imperial military, stepped forward. He was massive even for a Velcrosian, covered in battle armor. His weapon was drawn, pointed at Dae-sung. Everyone froze. The singing stopped. Only the broadcast heartbeat continued, echoing through the chamber. Vrextal stood there for a long moment. Then he lowered his weapon. He reached up to his helmet and removed it, revealing a face that no one had seen in years. And he smiled. It was an awkward expression, like he had forgotten how. But it was genuine. "I can hear it," Vrextal said, his voice rough and real. "I can hear the rhythm. It sounds like the war drums my ancestors used. It sounds like home." He looked at his soldiers. "Stand down, all of you. The human is right. We have been silent for too long." The guards lowered their weapons. The Emperor lay on his platform, overwhelmed by the sound of his own life. And throughout the city, Velcrosians were disabling their suppressors and hearing the world for the first time. Dae-sung's heart kept beating, and the city answered. The days that followed were chaos. Beautiful, messy, incredible chaos. The Emperor was removed from power, not through violence but through something more powerful, the simple fact that he could no longer function. The sound of his own heartbeat had broken something in him. After 300 years of denying his biological nature, being forced to confront it had shattered his carefully constructed identity. He was alive, but he no longer ruled. A council of representatives from across the Empire took temporary control, led by Commander Vrextal and High Chamberlain Velmoth. They had work to do, thousands of years of laws to undo, billions of beings to guide through the most fundamental change their civilization had ever experienced. Dae Sung watched it all from the embassy. He had become something he never wanted to be, a symbol. Humans across the galaxy were calling him a hero. Velcrosians were split. Some saw him as a liberator. Others blamed him for destroying their way of life. Most were simply confused, trying to understand what came next. Tae-hee visited him on the third day after the court incident. She looked different now. She walked with more confidence and her voice was stronger. She had been practicing using it. "The council wants to speak with you," she said. "Officially? About what?" Dae Sung asked. "About the future," Tae-hee said. "About what the Empire becomes now." The meeting took place in a smaller chamber, nothing like the Grand Court. There were maybe 20 beings present, representatives from different species and different worlds. Vrextal and Velmoth were there, along with several Velcrosians that Dae Sung recognized from the Resistance. "Human Dae Sung," Vrextal said, and his voice still sounded strange coming from his mouth instead of appearing in minds. "You have changed our world. Some say you destroyed it. Others say you saved it. What do you say?" Dae Sung thought carefully before answering. "I say I reminded you of something you had forgotten. What you do with that reminder is up to you." "We are struggling," Velmoth admitted. "Most of our people have never made sound before. They do not know how to speak, how to sing, how to simply exist without suppressors. It is frightening for them." "Change is always frightening," Dae Sung said. "But so is staying the same." A Velcrosian woman spoke up. Her name was Hae-won, and she represented one of the outer colonies. "There is violence. Some of the old guard, those who benefited from the Emperor's rule, are trying to restore the silence doctrine. They say that you have brought chaos and that only silence can bring order again." "How many support them?" Bora asked. She had joined Dae Sung for the meeting. "Too many," Hae-won said. "Perhaps 30% of the population. They want things to go back to how they were." "Things cannot go back," Tae-hee said firmly. "We cannot unhear what we have heard. We cannot forget the sound of our own hearts beating." "No," Vrextal agreed. "But we must give people a choice. The suppressors are still available for those who want them. We cannot force freedom on people any more than we could force silence." Dae Sung nodded. That made sense. Freedom meant having options, even the option to choose silence. "What about the other species in the Empire?" Hyunwoo asked. "The ones who were forced to be silent?" "We are lifting all restrictions," Velmoth said. "Any being who wants to remove their modifications or devices can do so. We are offering medical assistance, counseling, whatever they need." "Many are taking the offer," Hae-won said. "The Brekton especially. They have started a movement to restore their traditional heart songs. It is quite beautiful." Over the next few weeks, Dae Sung traveled throughout the Velcrosian capital. He wanted to see what was happening, to understand how the city was changing. What he found amazed him. Markets that had been silent for millennia now buzzed with conversation. Merchants called out their wares. Customers haggled and laughed. The sound was overwhelming at first, but it was alive. Parks that had been perfectly still now filled with music. Velcrosians were rediscovering old instruments, teaching themselves how to play. The music was not always good, not at first, but it was genuine. Schools were teaching young Velcrosians how to speak, how to use their voices. Children were laughing, shouting, playing. The sound of their joy echoed through streets that had known only silence for so long. But there was darkness too. In the older districts, groups of traditionalists gathered in protest. They wore their suppressors proudly and demanded that the old laws be restored. Some attacked those who made sound, seeing it as pollution of their sacred silence. Vrextal's forces had to intervene several times to prevent violence. The commander had become an unexpected champion of the new order, using his military might to protect those who wanted to make sound. "I spent my whole life enforcing silence," he told Dae Sung during one of their conversations. "I arrested people for humming. I destroyed instruments. I did terrible things because I believed it was right. Now I know better. I cannot change my past, but I can protect the future." Minsu received a message from Earth. The United Earth Council wanted Dae Sung to return home. They wanted to celebrate his achievement, to use him as a symbol of human courage and dignity. They wanted parades and speeches and medals. Dae Sung declined. I am needed here, he told Minsu. The work is not finished. What work? Minsu asked. You changed their entire civilization. What more is there to do? Change is just the beginning, Daesung said. Now comes the hard part. Helping people learn how to live with sound, how to find balance between silence and noise, how to build something new. He paused, listening to the sounds of the city outside the embassy windows, voices and music and the rumble of vehicles, life in all its messy glory. Besides, he added, I want to make sure this sticks, that the Emperor's fall was not just a temporary thing. The Emperor remained in isolation, his mind fractured by the revelation of his own mortality. Some said he was catatonic. Others said he was slowly coming to terms with what he had become. No one really knew. Daesung did not hate the Emperor. He almost pitied him. To spend 300 years running from your own nature, only to have it catch up with you in the end, it was a tragedy. 3 months after the incident in the court, the council held a referendum. All beings in the empire were asked to vote on a simple question. Should the silence doctrine remain law? The voting took weeks. Billions of beings across hundreds of worlds casting their choice. Daesung watched the results come in with his team, with Taehi and the resistance members, with new friends he had made in this strange, changing world. The final result was announced on a bright afternoon. 68% voted to abolish the silence doctrine. 32% wanted to keep it. It was not a perfect victory. More than 3 in 10 beings wanted silence to remain, but it was enough. The law was repealed. Sound was no longer forbidden. The celebrations that night were unlike anything Daesung had ever experienced. The entire city erupted in noise. Music from 1,000 cultures representing hundreds of species. Singing and shouting and laughter. Fireworks that crackled and boomed in the purple sky. And underneath it all, if you listened carefully, you could hear the rhythm that started it all. The sound of hearts beating. Billions of hearts across hundreds of worlds, all insisting on life. Daesung stood on the embassy balcony with his team. Bora had tears in her eyes, which he had never seen before. Hyunwoo was grinning like a child. Jiwon was recording everything, wanting to capture this moment for history. We did it, Bora said. We actually did it. You did it, Taehi said, joining them on the balcony. You showed us what we had forgotten. I just refused to be silent, Daesung said. You did the rest. You and your people. You chose to remember. What will you do now? Taehi asked. Will you go home? Daesung looked out at the city. It was so different from when he had first arrived. Louder, messier, more chaotic, more alive, eventually, he said. But not yet. I have been asked to help establish cultural exchange programs, teaching Velcrosians about music and art from other worlds, learning about the old Velcrosian traditions that were lost. That could take years, Jiwon said. Probably, Daesung agreed. Is that okay with all of you? I know you signed up for a diplomatic mission, not a cultural revolution. Bora laughed. Are you kidding? I would not miss this for anything. Hyunwoo nodded. This is the most important work we could do. Besides, someone needs to make sure you do not start another revolution by accident. I will stay, Jiwon said. There is so much to learn here, so much to document. Minsu appeared in the doorway behind them. I just got word from Earth. They are sending more diplomats, more teachers, more resources. Humanity wants to help with the rebuilding. Good, Daesung said. We will need it. They stood together watching the celebration below, and Daesung put his hand on his chest, feeling that familiar rhythm, the heartbeat that had changed a galaxy. Years later, when historians wrote about this time, they would call it the Great Awakening. The moment when the Velcrosian Empire transformed from a realm of silence into a symphony of voices. They would analyze the political factors, the cultural shifts, the economic impacts. But for those who lived through it, it was simpler than that. It was the day they remembered how to make sound, the day they stopped being afraid of their own hearts beating. Daesung eventually did return to Earth, 5 years after that first audience with the Emperor. He was older, more tired, but satisfied with what had been accomplished. The Velcrosian Empire still existed, but it was different now. Freer, louder, more alive. He gave a speech at the United Earth Assembly. The chamber was filled with representatives from across human space, all of them listening to what he had to say. What I learned, Daesung told them, is that sometimes the most revolutionary act is simply being yourself. I did not set out to change an empire. I just refused to change who I was. I refused to silence my heartbeat. He paused, looking out at the audience. Every one of you has a heartbeat. It is the most basic proof that you are alive. Do not let anyone tell you that it is too loud, too primitive, too much. Your heartbeat is your voice. It says, I am here, I exist, I matter. Never be ashamed of that. The applause was thunderous. But more than the applause, Daesung heard something else. He heard the collective rhythm of hundreds of heartbeats in the chamber. All slightly different, all unique, but all insisting on the same fundamental truth. Life goes on. Life insists. Life refuses to be silenced. On Velcros Prime, in the museum that had once been the Imperial Palace, there was a new exhibit. It was a simple room with black walls and perfect acoustics. In the center, a speaker played a recording on an endless loop. The sound of a human heartbeat, the rhythm that changed everything. Visitors came from across the galaxy to stand in that room and listen. Some cried, some smiled, some just stood in silence, feeling the rhythm wash over them. And in their own chests, their own hearts answered, beating in time, beating in defiance, beating in celebration of the simple, magnificent fact of being alive. Thump, 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 thump. The sound that cannot be commanded, the sound that cannot be controlled, the sound that defines what it means to be truly free, the sound of life itself refusing to be silent. Daesung heard that his story had become popular in the Empire. Parents told it to their children. Teachers used it in lessons. The human who would not be quiet, they called him. He found that amusing. He had never been trying to be loud. He had just been trying to live. And in the end, that was enough. That was everything. His heartbeat had been his answer. His heartbeat had been his voice. His heartbeat had been his rebellion. And it had freed billions. Sometimes the smallest sounds make the biggest difference. Sometimes refusing to change yourself changes the world. Sometimes a heartbeat is more powerful than an empire. Daesung learned all of this, and he carried it with him for the rest of his life. And whenever someone asked him about his greatest achievement, he would simply place his hand on his chest and smile. I just kept beating, he would say. That is all. Just kept beating. And that was the truth. The simple, powerful truth. Life insists, life persists, life beats on, and nothing in the universe can silence it.